All right, the second example to illustrate the importance of the right chronology in the history of evolution uh, is the first life on Earth did not require any oxygen, and uh, at the same time there wasn't any oxygen in the atmosphere, no O2, oxygen bonded to oxygen, diatoms. But then, through a process of photosynthesis, um, uh, primitive life released oxygen into the atmosphere. So now it's about 20% of the atmosphere is oxygen, and we do need oxygen today. Biological organisms such as human beings need to have uh, oxygen. So the oxygen came into our environment first, and then we evolved once the oxygen was available. So that's the second example of timing, of the importance of uh, the right things being in place at the right time for life to evolve as it did. Now, as a human being, I think that human beings are pretty good. But we did not need to evolve. According to Gould, there was nothing necessitating the arising of the rational animal that is mankind. And so far as I can tell, mankind is the only rational animal, at least by the standards of human rationality. But we don't need to be human-centric. We don't need to be anthropocentric. The pattern of progress is seen in all the natural world. And I'm as big a fan of the old glam metal as anybody, but you have to admit it's not just human beings that would have to worry about T-Rex if T-Rex were still with us. Time and time again, I think, we see one organism adapting to a new environment as laying the groundwork for a subsequent species to evolve in a new way. That is, it lays the groundwork for the new evolutionary changes of subsequent species. So you have to have step one, and then step two, and then step three, it seems. Now, there was a long and gradual process leading up to the present state of affairs, which, again, probably would turn out very different if the experiment, quote unquote, were tried again. And yet things did not turn out this other way that they could have. The way they did turn out seems pretty good. How could the biological world possibly be any better than it is under the neo-Darwinian system? I mean, as human beings, we are glad that human beings evolved, certainly. And human beings are reasonably safe from predators. Things like sharks and bears do sometimes maul or kill us, but if all predatorial threat was totally removed, that would destroy the food chain, and then we would all starve to death. So things are perhaps not quite so good for the lower animals as they are for human beings, but we should care mostly about our own species, Homo sapiens sapiens. Plus, as I said before, humans are better than other animals. So if nature has produced the existence of the greatest animal ever known and the greatest amount of safety for that animal, what can we really complain about? But doesn't all this smell the least bit fishy to you? It seems that all this highly improbable progress towards the Darwinian version of the best of all possible worlds, it seems that all this highly improbable progress towards the Darwinian version of the best of all possible worlds is a little too fishy. Surely it is at least more plausible than not to the open-minded evolutionist that the dice were loaded from the start to produce just the biosphere which we presently observe. Surely it at least seems that there was a goal towards which nature has been moving up until now, and this seeming certainly needs explanation on the part of the naturalist. A highly unlikely event probably won't occur, and yet it did. Maybe it wasn't highly unlikely, or maybe it wasn't purposeless, or maybe it wasn't unintelligent, or maybe it wasn't unguided after all. It seems to me that it is more likely than not the case that some intellect wanted the biosphere to turn out the way that it in fact turned out. And yes, I know that evolution is an ongoing process, so don't misunderstand me to be saying that it is finished with man and it's all done. But I don't mean to say that. But who could this intellect, this guiding force, this being who is loading the dice, or who has loaded the dice, who could this being possibly be? The only sensible answer is God. So, given evolution as it actually occurred, God almost certainly exists. But there is another view of evolution than the one held to by Stephen Jay Gould. Some evolutionary scientists have disagreed with Gould's claim that rewinding the tape of natural history and playing it again would produce a different movie. This alternative view is called the convergent view of evolution. This view says that the various species in a multitude of different environments tend to solve similar survival problems in similar ways. That is, there is a convergence towards similar biological structures in vastly different environments, and so evolution simply must turn out the same way, no matter how many times the experiment, quote unquote, is retried. That's according to the convergent view of evolution. The current biosphere is essentially unavoidable on this view, the convergent view, as opposed to having a ridiculously low prior probability. Now, the convergent perspective may elude my initial argument, but notice what it does not elude, namely an end towards which namely an end toward which nature is working. Natural selection converges different animals towards a specific end. Similar answers to similar problems of survivability. Once you admit that nature is working towards an end, though, you admit the Thomistic teleological argument, the fifth way of the Quinque Viae, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the 5 ways of Thomas Aquinas. And the fifth way proves that God exists. So convergence is, by definition, towards a particular end, moreover. Why just the particular end that evolutionary convergence moves biological structures towards? Why this end and not that end? It seems the atheistic evolutionist has no answer to this question, for it seems a divine agent is necessary to choose which goal amongst many possible goals that evolutionary selection would move towards. And there may be a third view of evolution, indeed there may be many more views of evolution besides these two, the Gouldian and the convergent views, though it is hard to see how there could be other views even in principle, because it's either going to converge or not, and if it's not converging, it would seem highly unlikely. But I'll leave that possibility open that there is or could be another, a third view of evolution. But if you hold either of these views of evolution, you have to admit that there probably is a God, for reasons that I've explained, and we'll have to end here. To be continued. Thank you.